February 7th, 2017. A routine inspection of the main spillway. Water was flowing at 52,500 cubic feet per second. Workers noticed something wrong. They stopped the flow and found a crater blowing through the concrete chute. The slab and the earth beneath it were gone. This is the tallest dam in America, 770 feet tall. It is 43 feet taller than Hoover. Behind it, 3.5 million acre-feet of water. Downstream, 188,000 people. The dam's only high-volume pressure valve had just broken open. How does the safety valve on the most important piece of water infrastructure in California fail? And who knew it was coming? California's water map has always been lopsided. 70% of the rain and snow falls north of Sacramento, but nearly 80% of the demand lies to the south, in cities, in the Central Valley, and in the fields of powerful agribusiness. In February 1955, the Feather River Basin unleashed its fury. Floodwaters swept across towns, killing 64 people and causing more than $200 million in damage. That disaster forced lawmakers to act, but the real battle was just beginning. At the Capitol, State Engineer A.D. Edmonston laid out a plan that would move water on a scale never seen before. He called for a massive dam at Oroville, a project so ambitious it would anchor the State Water Project and promise both flood control and a lifeline for southern farms. But support for the plan was razor thin. The Burns-Porter Act, the law that would fund it, scraped by in the 1960 election with a margin of just 174,000 votes out of 5.8 million. The state's north-south divide was more than just geography. It was a political fault line. J.G. Boswell II, the king of California cotton, marshalled the pressure of agribusiness. His coalition poured millions into lobbying demanding cheap, reliable water. The deal that emerged was built on promises of tight budgets and fast results. Every dollar counted. That cost sensitivity would echo for decades, shaping how the dam was built, how it was maintained, and how warnings were handled. The seeds of risk were sown before a single yard of earth was moved. Building Oroville Dam meant reshaping an entire valley, one trainload at a time. Crews laid down an 11-mile rail line, stretching from the old hydraulic pits at Bidwell Bar all the way to the construction site. Day and night, locomotives hauled bottom dump cars loaded with rock, sand and clay, moving 155 million tons over the 8-year project. The numbers alone are staggering. More than 80 million cubic yards of earth packed and rolled to form a wall 770 feet high, taller than any other dam in the country. The work was relentless and dangerous. 34 men lost their lives to quarry blasts, rail derailments, and sudden slope failures. In October 1965, a 40-car freight train jumped the tracks, spilling diesel across the western abutment and forcing a redesign of the rail system's grades and signals. Every setback demanded a fix, but speed remained the priority. The dam faced its first major trial in December 1964, when a torrent known as the Christmas Flood surged into the unfinished reservoir. Water rose until it stood just 4.5 feet below the top of the incomplete embankment. Only the diversion tunnels, still under construction, kept the river at bay, cutting peak flows by nearly half. The structure held, but the event exposed just how much depended on every layer of fill and every decision made far below the surface. When Governor Ronald Reagan dedicated Oroville Dam on May 4, 1968, he called it a monument to California's ambition. Yet beneath the speeches and fanfare, the mountain of earth and rock was already carrying the weight of choices made under pressure, choices that would be tested again decades later. Water from Lake Oroville doesn't just sit behind the dam. It moves, feeding cities, fueling crops, and turning turbines deep inside the mountain. The State Water Project stretches nearly 600 miles, with Oroville as its anchor. Every year, it delivers water to 27 million Californians and irrigates 750,000 acres of farmland. Beneath the dam, the Edward Hyatt power plant hums with 4 massive Francis turbines, producing over 800 megawatts of electricity, enough to power hundreds of thousands of homes. On paper, the system looks like a triumph of engineering. 21 dams, 700 miles of canals, and a reservoir holding 3.8 million acre-feet, more than half the entire project's storage. But the dam's job doesn't stop with supply. It is a shield against the kind of floods that once swept through the Feather River Basin. Independent assessments put the avoided flood damage at $1.3 billion each decade. Yet for all its utility, the project comes at a cost. The dam blocks salmon and steelhead from reaching their historic spawning grounds. To compensate, a hatchery now raises 20 million eggs each year, but the river's natural rhythm is forever changed. For the Department of Water Resources, the mission has always been clear: keep the water moving, keep the lights on, and keep the valley safe from floods. Every operational decision, every maintenance call has been shaped by the need to deliver, sometimes at the expense of everything else. Warnings surfaced long before the ground gave way at Oroville. In 2005, 3 environmental groups filed a petition with federal regulators, urging that the dam's emergency spillway be armoured with concrete and riprap. They warned that the unlined hillside would erode catastrophically if it were ever used. The Department of Water Resources and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission dismissed the request as misdirected and unsupported. No changes were made. 8 years later, engineers from the Department of Water Resources found new cracks stretching across the main spillway's concrete chute during a routine inspection. The findings landed in an internal memo, but were brushed aside as normal wear and scheduled for minor patch repairs. No one probed deeper into the foundation. The pattern stretched back decades. Technical papers from the 1980s documented cavitation damage and uneven settlement in the spillway, but these warnings stayed buried in filing cabinets. Maintenance became a matter of patching visible cracks and hoping for the best, a patch and pray approach that prioritised short-term fixes over lasting solutions. Regulators signed off on 5-year inspections that rarely went beyond a surface look. Each missed warning, each deferred repair, left the dam more vulnerable. By 2017, the gap between official assurances and physical reality had grown dangerously wide. Rain hammered the Feather River Basin for days, driven by atmospheric rivers that dumped record volumes of water and snowmelt into Lake Oroville. By February 7, 2017, operators watched reservoir levels climb at an alarming rate. To relieve the pressure, they opened the main spillway, sending more than 52,000 cubic feet per second thundering down the concrete chute. Within hours, a gaping crater, 250 feet wide and 50 feet deep, tore through the midsection, exposing raw earth and fractured rock. Engineers scrambled to adjust flows, but the damage only grew. By February 10, 2017, with the lake still rising, crews made the fateful decision to activate the emergency spillway for the first time since the dam's completion. Water poured over the unarmoured hillside, chewing a deep channel toward the valley below. The hillside began to unravel, sending debris cascading downstream. Fearing total collapse, authorities issued evacuation orders for nearly 188,000 people. Highways gridlocked for miles as families fled, not knowing if their homes would survive the night. Inside the command centre, operators and first responders raced to buy precious time, improvising barriers and monitoring every shift in the hillside. For hours, the fate of entire towns hung on decisions made minute by minute, with no guarantee that the dam, or the people below, would hold. 9 months after the hillside nearly gave way, a team of outside investigators delivered their verdict in a 584-page report. The independent forensic team found no single villain, only a chain of missed warnings, outdated rules, and divided responsibilities stretching back decades. The manual that guided critical decisions in 2017 hadn't been updated since 1970. Operators relied on obsolete flood models, even as storms grew more unpredictable. Cost pressure from the 29 public water agencies, each demanding maximum water deliveries, meant maintenance was deferred, inspections stayed shallow, and real upgrades were always postponed. The report called it a systemic failure, not just of engineering, but of oversight, communication, and risk management. The physical scars ran deep, but the financial wounds were staggering too. The price tag for rebuilding the main and emergency spillways soared past $1.1 billion. FEMA, citing preventable flaws, refused to cover the full amount. The new design called for more than 500,000 cubic yards of concrete and 13 million pounds of reinforcing steel, an attempt to erase decades of shortcuts with sheer mass. Yet the investigation left a larger question hanging. If the tallest dam in America could be brought to the edge by old manuals and patchwork fixes, What does that mean for thousands of aging, high-hazard dams across the country? Across the United States, more than 15,000 high-hazard dams stand guard over towns, cities, and farmland. Most were built in the decades when the rules of engineering and climate seemed fixed, but time and weather have rewritten those assumptions. By 2017, nearly 70% of these dams were already past their 50th birthday, aging giants, many with maintenance records as patchy as Oroville's. The American Society of Civil Engineers assigned a D grade to the nation's dam infrastructure in its report card, calling out the urgent need for upgrades and oversight. Oroville's ordeal was not an outlier. It was a warning. Climate volatility is pushing rainfall and snowmelt to new extremes, testing old designs with floods they were never built to handle. For every high-profile failure, thousands more dams wait in silence, their risks hidden behind familiar landscapes. The question is no longer if another crisis will come, but whether communities and policymakers are willing to act before it does. Today, over 2,200 high-hazard dams across the US remain rated as deficient. Oroville's billion-dollar lesson is a warning, not a relic. As climate extremes accelerate and infrastructure ages, the next crisis may not wait for us to notice. The water isn't the only thing held back.